Hello everybody, my name is Peace People. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if you're new. And we're just going to continue with it if you wouldn't mind. And I would hope you have watched the first two parts before this, because it wouldn't make any sense if you didn't. But anyways, let's get into what if. So, continuing our story, we see as Deku is sitting in class, as Aizawa has just done explaining the sports festival. And, well, they just get ready and go to the sports festival. They all get into the jumpsuits and get ready to start. And Deku decides he's probably just gonna turn on flight here and just fly over everybody. Which he does. He says flight, and then he then gets to a running stance. Then as the doors open, he just flies out like a bolt of lightning. Then he just flies past everyone, and then when people actually start to catch up to him, he actually turns off flight and turns on jets and float, and then just starts outpacing everybody. And yeah, not much happens. Deku just wins pretty easily because he's just flying. And then he turns off his quirks and just jogs into the entrance. So, continuing, we see as everyone's Deku gets the 10 million points, and Ase, Bakugo, Kirishima, and I think Denki all group up, and Bakugo says he's gonna be on the guy on the top, which Deku's used to because Bakugo likes being on the top, at the top dog. But yeah, so Bakugo gets on top of everybody, and I gotta just turn the mic off here. So Bakugo puts on the headband and gets on to the 3. And yeah. So Monoma obviously goes to rush Bakugo, thinking he's overconfident, but Deku shuts Monoma down by just saying rubber floor, and then the floor gets like really bouncy for the people under it. So when they try to rush over to them, like running, their feet starts bouncing and get out of sort, and they just topple over, and Monoma gets disqualified, just loses, and that's Monoma out. So they grab their points, and it really is just everyone rushing them, with Deku and Bakugo just keeping them off with explosions and, just bouncing. Of course, Todoroki is probably the closest person who ever gets to him by probably skating in with like a block eyes, because technically he's not touching the ground. So he probably gets close to getting it, but probably Deku is like one of his last resorts. And Deku used like rubber, everyone, and then everyone turned rubber. So, well, everyone in the group turned rubber, minus Denki, so they wouldn't get electrocuted or stunned. So Todoroki got shot out, but his group caught him, and they then the buzzer went out, and everyone says timer. So all 3 of them, 4 of them move on, with Todoroki still there. So, but then we move on to the arena fights. But before that, Deku accidentally runs into Todoroki after the fight. After the cavalry battle, with Todoroki saying that he's gonna beat him because their fight is lined up after Deku's. Because Todoroki and Deku both know that he's gonna demolish Shinzo. No matter what kind of quirk he got, he's not beating Deku. Because Deku's gonna take it seriously. And beat him. And Todoroki knows he's beating Zoro in like 2 seconds flat. So as Deku sits in the stands and sees Zoro just get ice blocked, iceberg, he thinks on what's up with Todoroki, considering, way overboard. But he kind of just leaves it for the match. So when it's Deku's turn to fight Shinzo, he just immediately just goes flight, flies over and tackles Shinzo out of the ring. Yeah, pretty sad for Shinzo, but pretty easy for Deku. But yeah, then Todoroki versus Deku, because I'm skipping all the fights that don't include Deku. So the fight begins with Deku saying to Todoroki that, "Are you okay?" With Todoroki not answering him, shooting an iceberg at Deku, but Deku just turns on super strength and punches it. Then Deku gets to his stance, says jets, and then basically flies, teleports over to Todoroki, going for a big punch. Todoroki slides over, shooting a giant iceberg, but Deku actually gets hit by it, but just breaks out of it. Then he turns off quirks, turning on shockwaves, so he basically punches like All Might does. Basically punching the air and then making shockwaves out of it to shoot projectiles. So that happens, and Todoroki just puts on ice blocks to block all the air bullets, but Deku just keeps punching them faster and faster, eventually turning on speed and just punching really way faster. So Todoroki has to get in, and he slides in, shooting icebergs up so he can't get hit, and then flies over, grabs Deku's, I guess, shoulder, and starts to freeze him, but Deku just uses his speed to, just knock Todoroki back with a palm strike. Of course, this also shoots an air blast, sending Todoroki really far, almost out of the ring, but he catches himself and slides back down. Then Deku's arm is like really hard, can't move as much because frozen over. So he turns on superheat after turning off shockwaves, which actually just starts making his body really hot. Which then he speeds over the Todoroki and slaps him to the ground, but Todoroki just kind of just catches himself and then shoots an iceberg at Deku, setting him up, with Todoroki just like running up the iceberg, then shooting an icicle into his hand, and then slashing Deku up. Mostly his outfit, but still. Then Deku grabs Todoroki's wrist with the ice thing, and it kind of makes Todoroki let it go. Grabs his leg, and then kind of just flies down to the ground and slams Todoroki into it. With Todoroki shooting more ice, with Deku saying this is getting repetitive in his head. Then he slams the ice off him and then runs over and tells Todoroki that he's just not going to beat him with this. Todoroki saying, "It doesn't matter, I'm going to beat you with it." With Deku saying, "It's what I just say." Then Todoroki keeps trying to throw ice, but Deku just keeps breaking it over and over again. With super strength and speed and heat and shockwaves. It's just, Todoroki's just not winning here without his fire. Well, even then he probably wouldn't. It doesn't matter. So Todoroki starts getting, really cold and overheat, actually freezing. So Deku starts telling Todoroki to use his fire already. This is taking too long. So Todoroki, instead of hearing the "take you too long," he only hears "your fire." So he then get sparked, flashbacks, and then fire. So Deku then starts playing on the offensive, getting scorched all over the place. He can't play offensive anymore. Then every single time he tries to play offense, Todoroki just uses an iceberg to block every punch Deku throws. So Deku starts getting overpowered. Then he turns on durability and just starts getting pushed back into the sand, almost out of the berg. But then Deku turns on flight, then just flies upwards, and flies back down to shoulder tackle Todoroki. Through the ice he's built up. Then Todoroki gets bounced up into the air. The Deku flies over with a tackle. Todoroki starts shooting a jet fire behind him to shoot himself forward to counter Deku's flying. And it's actually is countering it, so they kind of just get stalemated in the ground. They get stalemated in the middle, and then Deku just knows this isn't working. So he turns on weight, which just makes him really heavy. So he just falls to the ground with Todoroki's legs, so his legs get kind of hurt. So Todoroki then shoots an iceberg. Yeah, and that actually pushes Deku off, with Deku turning off both his quirks, then turning on shockwaves and jets to fly over and shoot a jet. Shooting himself to the ground, turning jet off. Then Deku is about to throw a punch when he says speed under his breath, and then heat, which makes him look like he just runs over to Todoroki and punches Todoroki in the face, kind of leaving a burn mark on his face of his knuckles, spitting Todoroki out. Then Deku turns on super strength, grabs Todoroki. He also turns off speed to use strength, slamming Todoroki, bouncing him. Then Deku gets under him, kicking him up. Then he uses flight to fly over, grabbing Todoroki's leg, spinning, and throwing him to the ground. He turned off heat for that. Then he flies over, turns on weight again, and then just lands on Todoroki with like a elbow, which I think that would put Todoroki out of commission, just knocking him straight out. Not straight out, but out, anyways. But sorry about that noise. But anyways, yeah, Deku wins. So after that fight, Deku just visits Todoroki in the infirmary after almost cracking a rib. But Todoroki says that he thanks Deku for making him realize his quirk is his. With Deku just saying, no problem. With his mind saying, didn't know I did that. You're welcome. Yeah. Oh yeah, Deku isn't really close with Ida here, so he doesn't really sense anything with Ida. Which is foreshadowing. But anyways, we just see Deku watch all the fights and just commented on it like a side character. But anyways, we finally get to Todoroki. Oh yeah, Deku versus Bakugo. With Bakugo already ready for Deku's shenanigans, he just immediately throws a giant explosion, like almost the size of Todoroki's iceberg that he threw at Sero. But of course it dims down when it gets close to the crowd. With Deku getting hit with his full force, he gets kind of flown back, but he catches himself with a flight and almost out of the ring. Flies back to Bakugo, skidding across the ground. Him then turning on shockwaves and then punching Bakugo in the gut, shooting him upwards. Bakugo, able to fly, shoots himself around, shoots himself back down, shooting a giant explosion with like a down spike. With this extra hit, Deku making him take a knee. Then Deku turns off then turns on speed and strength and tackles Todoroki, not Bakugo, sorry, and actually pushing him almost outside the ring. But Bakugo shoots himself straight down and straight forward to knock Deku off his feet. Then he shoots himself up, grabbing Deku by the legs, spinning, making his feet actually shoot explosions out of them, throwing Deku up. Then he shoots himself up to Deku. Then grabs him by the hand, and then just starts spinning, doing basically a hidden lotus, and slamming Deku to the ground. Then Deku, before hitting the ground, turned on durability, so it hurt less. Still hurt, but less. So then he turns off both of them, and then turns on vibrate, which makes him vibrate at extreme speed. So Bakugo's basically trembles so much that he has to let go. Then Deku just vibrates the ground so fast that dust starts coming up like a lot, so it's like a smoke screen. Then Deku turns off it very quietly, then turns on manipulation, which is him manipulating the smoke so Deku is more hidden than he would have been. Then Deku manipulates the ground itself to shoot off a spike, which Baku explodes. Well, not actual spike, but like a pillar. Then Baku just gets his load of pillars, but Deku just blows all of them up. With Baku then flying over, putting his hand to Deku's chest, shooting back, making Deku slide really far back, almost out of the ring. But Deku then turns off manipulation, then turns on strength, slamming the ground again, removing all the dust, so the fight's more visible again. At first, everyone was just seeing explosions from the smoke. Then Bakugo's then flies up, really high up, then starts just making a boatload of explosions, basically doing a howitzer. That's basically his big plan. It's a nuke. So he flies over to Deku, and Deku, knowing that this is basically Bakugo's last resort, kind of decides he's just going to try blocking it. So he turns on durability and wait, so he can basically catch Bakugo. So he plants his feet and grips onto the ground. Actually took his shoes off just to have more grip. So Bakugo flies in, slamming into Deku, and this makes Bakugo actually just catch into Deku, and Deku actually caught him. It almost knocked Deku out, but then Deku flips Bakugo over to his waist, and then basically suplexes him over the ring, knocking Bakugo out of the ring. With Bakugo, just since it's basically a better, nicer Bakugo, he just takes the loss. Still mad, but takes the loss at least. So after the ceremony of Deku getting the medal, he then learns about Ingenium's whole pain thing, with Ida saying that was his brother, with Deku surmising, yeah, that probably was. But yeah, I think that's where I'm going to leave things right now. Hope you liked the video. This is me just getting back into the groove. So, yeah, see ya. It's kind of